looking at the BMW 325xi, you'll notice there's that service light right down there. And this unit here, too, is you'll notice there's also, you'll see that little brake. Let's see if I can get up closer. Right there. That brake symbol and the ABS and brake light is on. And in these BMWs, if you're doing a lot of off-road driving in that, they will actually do that because the sensor gets dirty. And actually, as you can see, there's a lot of miles, but this has a newer engine and a new transmission in it. But this here is a problem usually that just kicks on, and usually if your tires are slipping on the mud and the snow, it'll do the same thing. It automatically kicks it off. But once you start driving down the road again, it turns off. And people think, they got to go and reset it by unplugging the battery for an hour, which does reset your GM module or your general module or the computer itself, because the computer runs everything in this car. It's just insane. One thing I don't like about BMW today is, and in fact a lot of cars are doing it, a lot of car manufacturers are doing it, is making cars that have everything run on the computer, which is garbage. But in another way, they do save a lot of money in the long run, because they don't have to have separate controllers for the, every little thing, every switch in the car, and so they can just run it straight through there. To me, I think just running it straight to the battery through a fuse box is a lot easier, and so you got to do aftermarket kind of stuff to make your car work properly. So you're going to have to go with, aftermarket window, or just run the wires directly, from the window motors and go right to the battery through the fuse box. It's a lot of wiring, but they did it to save money on wiring. But and it really, actually, if you think about it, they ran the wire over there, so you could probably just tap into the positive and negative and run through from the fuse box itself before it goes into the computer, which of course is going to draw down the voltage on the computer and probably cause more faults. But you can also do it the other way with aftermarket stuff, and even get prior, like earlier model BMW stuff, and just modify your car. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do with this, because every sensor in this car is getting torn out except for the engine. I mean, that's one thing that's kind of hard to do. And the transmission, I think, has to stay that way, which I could do that. They have an aftermarket deal I've seen online where people are changing even the transmission part out so the computer doesn't run that. Because it can all be hacked into. It could be made to cause an accident. So that's not really cool either. But for the major end of this, with this electronic and the sensors and everything popping up saying whatever's wrong with the car, and service now, if I do this, in fact, if I turn the car off and then I go like this, you'll see 1,150 miles service time. So now that is when I got to service this car and have it inspected. So I got 1,150 miles left, and that's why the service light is on. And and then I got to get the oil changed and all that stuff at that time. So, but for the most part on this, like the transmission, when you switch it over, in fact, I've noticed I had if you back up and then you don't stop, within a certain amount of speed, and you try throwing it in drive, there's a there's a little gear that'll come up on here, and it'll automatically put the transmission into safe mode. It's a safety thing, which is okay, but you aren't going to be doing any burnouts by throwing it in drive on this thing. It just won't do it. You can burn out regular, just put it in drive and stomp on it, and it'll actually burn the tires off a little bit. And when you switch over from the you go to drive, and then you switch over to manual, and you go, like there's 1, so it's a manual 1, and I go to 2, and I go 3, go back up to 1. So what that's doing there on this, if you go to try to just switch it over, like if you're backing up or whatever, and you just switch it over real fast, it also kicks into the safety mode and puts you like in 3rd or 4th gear in the manual, so you can put it back in drive. And but basically what you got to do is you put it in park. When it shows that gear, put it back in park. Just put it back in park, turn the car off, and wait a minute, and then start it up again, and then you're good to go. Because I've noticed it'll just stay, the gear just stays there, and then you can't go anywhere real fast because it's in 3rd gear, and if you're trying to get up a hill, it ain't going to happen. So you literally have to stop, put it in park, turn the car off, then turn it back on, and then the gear will disappear and the computer resets itself or whatever, so you can just go ahead and take off. It doesn't really reset, it just kind of, for that period of time, it lets the transmission like resets itself in the transmission area, where it just tells the signal that it's good to go again. So having a BMW is a lot of work. I mean, good grief, I've had to troubleshoot a lot of stuff on this thing already, and all of it's electronic. I mean, every dang thing that you troubleshoot on thing has to do with electronics and the computer module. And that computer module is the biggest pain in the ass anybody could ever ask for. And it's on the newer cars, and they're trying to get this self-driving thing and all that garbage. They're going to have problems with that, I mean, it's just not going to work. They keep trying to, change things to make it better, and they're going backwards. Sure, it's cool for a minute, but after a while you're like, man, the stupid sensors keep going off, and this sensor goes off, and that sensor goes off, and you get your car dirty, and all the sensors are going off, and you get the backup sensor dirty, it don't work. So what's the point? I mean, why put that in there when you got to sit there and make sure that thing's clean every day, or the sensor ain't gonna work? You can't depend on the sensors in the car, because you'll have an accident. And if you're backing up and that sensor don't work, you're not going to hear anything because the sensor's not picking up the car behind you, and you're going to run into that car. You always got to keep cleaning your car. You got to go car wash all the time and clean the brakes, wash everything off, because there's dirt getting packed up in there, and when it's snow out, it does the same thing and packs up in there, and then all these sensors come on, and your ABS turns off, and your brakes light sensor comes on, and it's a real pain in the ass, really. I mean, BMW kind of went downhill in my book, and so a lot of other car companies coming out with this garbage. You know what I like? I like the heated seats. I like the fact that it's full drive. The automatic temperature sensor is fine. I like that, because you can turn the sensor up here, go up to 91 degrees and make it warm in here. I like that feature. That's kind of nice. But so is the dial. What's the difference? You can turn the dial, and you don't have to know what temperature it is. But again, there's another sensor right above that 91 degrees. That's a sensor for determining the temperature inside the room here. And if it is dirty or anything's blocking it, it won't work, so you're gonna get, it's not gonna work. So there's another thing about these BMWs, is they have an air filtration system, inside here for the cab. So, you know, it's filtering the air inside the cab and everything and getting all the stuff out. But if you buy a car that's been previously owned, you probably want to change that right away, because if there was a smoker in there or they had animals, like, oh man, when I bought this car, the people that had it had a dog, and literally, first time going down the road and you turn the air conditioner on, it smells like wet dog. It was bad. You know, you had to tear that filter out and throw it away because it was bad. It stunk so bad. So yeah, but even though the interior of the car was immaculate, you know, there was nothing really wrong with it. But the smell from the dog itself, the dander, it was just horrible. Oh gosh. And so yeah, that's another problem. You know, and of course you get friends that get in the car and they want to smoke, and you know, what are you gonna say? You know, you gotta. Sometimes you're gonna go on a long trip, and you know, you're not gonna have a friend smoking. Well, your filter's gonna get dirty, and so you gotta clean that out and get a new filter put in. And it's not very much, you know. I mean, but as much as a regular car filter, so you know, $20. And you know, there's a lot of little things inside this BMW that are really cool, but the only thing that bothers me is the computer module, and they call it a general module, GM or ECU. And so basically that unit there is the only thing that is going to be a pain in the ass in these cars. You get a newer BMW, that's what you're going to deal with. And the newer going in 2017, 2018 BMWs are going to be a total nightmare. I mean, I can just, you know, everything is going to be just like this. It's all through the computer, you know. And this has been chipped. This car has been chipped now. So I actually get more horsepower and better mileage when I keep my foot out of the gas. But I do have the extra horsepower. And they say a lot of stuff about the, you know, the chips that you know, you're only going to get 15 horsepower or whatever. Actually, you know, I get a little bit more than that. So, and it does, you can tell a difference. And although it also is the gas saving thing, so when you keep your foot out of it, you actually get pretty good gas mileage. I mean, you know, they say in the book, I think its book says something like around 29 or something like that. We can definitely over 31. Getting 31 miles per gallon on this thing. So that's not bad. And but when you're doing a lot of stuff in the mountains, of course, you're going higher RPMs, and you know, you're going to be using a lot more gas in the mountains. But the other thing is this is something that, you know, if you buy a car like this, within a few years you're going to be selling it, because it's going to drive you crazy with these stupid sensors, and they're expensive to replace. I mean, you know, granted, some are pretty decent within the range of $100. Other ones are $300 or $400. So, you know, sensors can be a real pain in the ass. So the other thing with the engine, if you want to put a loud muffler or change it out to some kind of Flow Max or whatever you want to put on your, you know, go 4-inch Flow Max or whatever, you put something, you know, different on here, and you try to take that catalytic converter off if you're not in California, and you got to take those sensors off. You got to actually tie those sensors off, you know, take the wires and tie them off underneath and take those sensors out, because your car will run like garbage, you know, if you try to put that in a bigger muffler. And then there's other little things like the sensor inside by the air filter. There's a little air intake sensor for oxygen sensor, and if there's a bug that crawls in there, like a hornet or something, the hornet, if it attaches itself, or any kind of bug or dirt gets itself attached to that thing, will make your car run horrible. And that's what happened to me. This car was running, I just drove it home, and next thing you know, a couple hours, I hopped back in it and started up, and the thing started running. I mean, it was jumping around, and you know, it's running on 2 cylinders or something. It was horrible, and I was like, what the heck's going on? Did a little bit of research, and sure enough, saw where someone else had the same kind of problem, and they went in and solved it by pulling that little sensor out right behind the air filter. It's like maybe in a 3-inch little tube section of it, and you pull that sensor out and you just spray it down with air. Use your air compressor and spray it off really good, and put it back in, and your car run fine. So that happens a lot. People don't know why their cars run like garbage when they get in it, because it got dust in there, or bugs, or bees, or because actually there's a pretty big hole in that screen that they have in there, so there's bugs that can get through there, even little tiny bees or beetles or any kind of bug. And well, they get sucked in there and they stick to that little rod in there, that sensor. And you gotta just take it, and you're not supposed to touch it with your fingers or get any kind of oil or anything, and not supposed to even wipe with a rag. But I suppose they've been saying you can take like a napkin, a real dry napkin, and rub it down if you want. But don't spray anything on there. No WD-40, no cleaners, nothing on there. Just wipe it down dry, and it should fix it. But if you got an air compressor, just take that thing off and blow it out really good with an air compressor, and make sure you're blowing that crap off the rod, the sensor in there, and it should run fine. And they're saying that usually that's 90% of the problem, and people replace it thinking it's bad, and generally, they can turn around and recondition them just by cleaning them off, and because there's some crud in the back they don't see or something, or dust sucks up something in there. But for the most part, yeah, that's the thing here with these BMWs. They're nice cars, and I do like the performance. I love the interior, the leather seats, the electric seats is great. And like in that other car, it's great to have that. But then again, you really don't need electric seats. I mean, just like anything else. I mean, you're only going to touch it a couple times, a year, if that, if someone else drives your car. Mostly you put it one spot and you leave it. So there's little things in here that probably don't need to be in a BMW, but they just kind of loaded it up because BMW's been, supposed to be just as good as Mercedes. But Mercedes is good too, but and Volvo and Volkswagen, they're all good cars, but I just thought for once I'd go with a BMW when I bought this, and because I've had Fords and Chevys and Subarus and Toyotas, and I don't know, I've had a lot of cars. Chryslers, Dodge, GM, went through a whole bunch of them. So yeah, it was time for a change, and I thought, I'll try a BMW. Have a little luxury. Knew I had to put some money into it when I got it because I had a lot of miles on it, and I put a whole lot more miles on it, as you can see. There's like a lot, and so now it runs great, drives great. Everything's practically new on it now. Everything's been replaced. So only thing that's going to really change later in the future, within the next year, is getting all the sensors that I don't need are going to be taken off. And yeah, because that's just, I mean, I'm just going to take a whole bunch of stuff off this car that I don't need. It doesn't need, if it doesn't need it to run, then it's getting taken off, because this is ridiculous. Yeah, that's another thing about these. You can, if you push that lock button and someone's in this car, if you push the lock button on your key and someone's in the car and it locks the car, they can't get out. There's no way. I mean, you can't even open the door from the inside, no matter what. You're locked in here. That's kind of a freaky part, I don't like that at all. So that's going to change. That's getting taken out. It was supposed to be part of that EWS, or the thing where it protects, electronic security protection of the car. And you know, it's like, give me a break. You know, a brand new Subaru costs just as much as these things. You know, I mean, it's not like these things are high top end, you know, a lot of money anymore. These are actually reasonably priced for everyday cars now. These are less than some of the cars out there, like the Subaru or even the Kias are twice as much, as almost twice as much, but not quite. But you know, they want 50 some $1,000s for a Kia. This thing's only 29,000, brand new. You know, there's nothing spectacular about it. You know, it's just all does have like little features and stuff, but it does have leather seats. You know, and this nice heated seat going right now is warming me up. But for the price that you know you pay for these used, you can pick up a used Subaru between $3,000 and $4,000. I mean, not Subaru. You can pick a used Subaru up for $3,000 and $4,000, but you can also pick up a decent used BMW for $3,000 to $4,000 too. And although your insurance is going to be cheaper, and it's cheaper to license a BMW than it is a Subaru, believe it or not, because they got like 8 airbags in this thing, side airbags, front airbags. I mean, it's like there's airbags everywhere you look. You know, these things are, you get in an accident, you're just like in a big bubble. So they have this, you know, it makes it cheaper in insurance. And they are fun to drive. I will grant, you know, that to BMW because they are fun to drive. I do enjoy this a lot more. The comfort in this car is 10 times better than the Subaru. My Subaru, I mean, I drive 40 miles and I get out and my back is hurting and my butt feels like I was sitting on a board. I mean, Subaru has the worst seats in the world. They are uncomfortable. They're not comfortable at all. You know, people go, oh, they're not bad. Yeah, well, you know, if they got a, you know, bunch of something on their ass, yeah, then they can have a comfortable ride. But, you know, when you're skinnier, you don't have that kind of comfort. So, and then when you get in a BMW, the comfort actually is really nice. I actually like the view of the looking out the window. Of course, having tinted windows is nice, but you know, you get out the, you know, and of course this has a different type of radio in it. It's not standard. It's a blah punk, and the lights in here are actually kind of cool. You know, I mean, although I'm not a really red person, I'm not into the red lights, but it's got more of a lava color. And these are actually pretty decent lights for the console and the steering wheel lights. You know, and you get the lights on the doors, and you know, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, for a Subaru, I would say the automatic transmission in a well, this XI transmission is a lot better than the Subaru. It's lasted, you know, when it was changed, it was like it was up in the 200 something range. So, you know, that lasted quite a long time. Now a Subaru automatic that I had, it lasted only like a little over 100,000 and it was trashed, you know. So generally most cars today built, the transmission is only going to last 100,000 miles, and you got to change it out or have it rebuilt, and that's a problem. But with BMW, you don't even get a dipstick for a transmission. The transmission is entirely sealed. Only way to get to it is underneath the car, and you can't check the transmission fluid or anything because it's all sealed and it don't leak and it don't use anything. So, but they suggest that you change it out every 100,000 miles. Take it to a dealer and have them change the transmission fluid, just, you know, for extra precaution. Kind of nice to do that, keep it nice and clean. But the other one went for what, 200 and some thousand miles, and then started having little bits of problem. But you know, for the most part, that was pretty good. You know, I'm pretty impressed. And it's like, the older cars are even better yet. I mean, some of those BMWs and Mercedes are still going. I mean, Mercedes built in the 40s and 50s are still using the same transmission. Talk about good quality. And I think that's probably what I might go with next. Even if I do keep this one, I might buy another older, very old BMW, something that's, and within my price range. Because they're starting, if they're like if they only made so many to get into the 40s and, well, even the 50s or 60s, they're getting up there in quite a bit of money for restored BMWs, or even a BMW in good condition. So I won't be doing that. I'll be getting something probably 70s, 80s, BMW, or Mercedes. Just because I don't have all this electronic garbage, and I would like to have one. Maybe I'll get a Mercedes next time. And then I've had Volvo. I had a nice Volvo for a while there. It was okay. It wasn't really that great. The seats kind of sucked and it wasn't really comfortable that well. Although they're better today, but it was a 80s Volvo, and I wasn't too impressed with it. It did look kind of cool, but I wasn't really too impressed with it, and so I sold it. But yeah, it's kind of nice getting some German vehicle anyway, and just play around with it, try it out for a while, and if you don't like it, you can always sell it. That's what I thought. I thought, well, if I don't like this car, I'll just turn around and sell it within a year or something. And so far I like it. The only thing I'm dealing with is these sensors. Those brake things keep popping on. I don't know if it'll come off here probably in a little while, because once I start going down the road, it'll turn off. And then the interior is pretty cool. I mean, it's not too bad at all. I mean, got the nice color, nice shade, nice. It's beautiful in here. Nice. That's one thing that BMW did do, is make a beautiful car in the inside and out, and the outside looks nice too. For the price range, a person could buy these, get even a newer one for 2010 for $7,000-8,000. You got to look around, and you'll find them. Some people think they're gold, because it's a BMW, and it's not worth a whole lot, because they made them to priced them for the everyday person, so everybody could afford one. And if you want the high-end ones, yeah, they got $250,000 BMWs, but I mean, who in the world is, unless you're a millionaire, yeah, you can get those, but most people just want something to drive around, and they can take off road and go four-wheeling. Like this one here is four-wheel drive, so I can take this four-wheeling and go up the mountains. I can go skiing. I can go to Colorado and go to Aspen or Breckenridge or whatever, and spend a day skiing, and then take off and go find some place to stay in another town that's cheaper. But I mean, at least I have four-wheel drive, and that's what I look for in every car I buy. I gotta have four-wheel drive. This is one thing I know for a fact, that I'll never get a car that's two-wheel drive unless it's just a hot rod that I can drive during the summer, like a Camaro or something, and that kind of stuff. But which I would like to have eventually. But yeah, I got a few cars right now. I got to get rid of a couple. I'm always having like 7-8 cars. I don't know why. I have usually a couple trucks and a couple cars and an SUV or two, and yeah, I'm just like that. I got to have a car for everything. I've just, because they're cheap too. You can buy them cheap on Craigslist, and you can spend $1,000-1,500 on an SUV now. Get a Ford Explorer for $800-900 that's in halfway decent shape, and it'll run for a while, and then may have to put some parts in it later, but actually it's still pretty decent shape ones. And for a truck, yeah, you can get a truck for $1,500 that's in really good shape even, and it's got a lot of miles on it, but they still run. So that kind of stuff, it's good to have, because you want to get off. Now, I'm an outdoors person. I live out in the outdoors. I live away from this town anyway, like 14 miles. So it's nice having this, just even for, if it's really nasty, bad, it's got 2 feet of snow on the road, I'll drive the SUV and save this, why beat this thing up, But if the road's plowed and it's nice and it's not too bad and it's a nice day, I'll take it to town, you know, take it to the city or something. But yeah, I mean, these are just, they're nice cars. Anybody that's thinking about getting a BMW, I just thought I'd cover some of the things that are kind of a pain in the ass in these and some of the good things about them. So yeah, and this is 2003 BMW, and this is actually pretty decent. I actually was impressed when I got it. Um, you know, it was very comfortable, and then drove it 1,000 miles home, and then so yeah, when I went to 2 states over from me and bought it, and drove it home. But this is one of those things that if you're always kind of wanting a car that you always wanted in your life, and BMW is one of them, because I remember as a kid growing up, and BMW people that drove BMWs, kind of looked at them like, yeah, you're driving in style. And it wasn't that I thought they were rich, it was just I thought they were driving in style, because they looked so comfortable, which they were when I sat in them and stuff. Go to the car dealership and you sit in a new BMW and you're like, man, these things are so comfortable. And there are comfortable cars out there. In fact, the trucks with the bench seats are more comfortable than any other car out there. And they need to make more trucks with bench seats, because that was the ultimate comfort. And not only that, you could have a girlfriend sitting next to you, with her arm around you while you're driving. And that was always nice too, So the bench seat was very comfortable, and you could have your girl sitting right next to you instead of having her 4 feet away from you over a console, and kind of sucks, But yeah, even the old cars with the bench seats in the front were nice. That was really cool. Everybody likes those, and then that's the reason why they're so comfortable. They were actually springs inside the seat, like a bed, and they were made it more comfortable ride. And nowadays it's just foam packed on metal, and if you're lucky, they put a little airbag in there. But the airbag is like, when you pump up the airbag, it's like sitting on a, this gets really hard on your butt if you're sitting on an airbag that's pumped up trying to get comfortable, and so you just got to deflate it and just sit on the foam. But these don't have springs. These seats today don't have springs in them. So if you really want comfort, go old. Get an old BMW, get an older Mercedes, get an older Volkswagen, get something that's old. And you got back problems or something, you need something that's comfortable. That's what you got to go with, because either that or get a BMW, that's even 15, 18, 20 years old, and you'll have a nice comfortable ride, within your budget, because these things are fairly reasonable. I mean, there's a couple I looked at that were $2,500, and they were 2001, 2002, 1999 for $2,000. I mean, they were really comfortable too, but it's like you kind of look at, well, how much maintenance has been done on them and that kind of stuff, because they can get expensive if you're starting to replace every single thing on a car, like this one. This one's got a pretty good record, maintenance record. I got all the paperwork and everything with it. So, and then I could go on Carfax.com and look everything up on it. And between the new motor and the new transmission in it, it's actually runs really good now. Of course, why wouldn't it, But yeah, and then you figure, you spend what do you spend, like maybe $2,000 on a halfway decent truck that's used, and then you end up taking it off road and beating it up a little bit, replacing the shocks, the brakes, probably maybe in a full drive unit if you tore it out, you're $350 or whatever for that, and then couple $100 in brakes and shocks, you know. Well, you kind of look at it like this. I mean, the parts for this too are not that bad. The struts and the shocks and stuff are really actually the same price as most other things, you know, that's out there. And you know, the newer stuff is more expensive, of course, but the older stuff is pretty reasonable. So the maintenance end of this isn't too bad. And the GM, you can find used controller computers, general, you know, the modules that run the whole car for like $30. And I've seen them, you know, online. And of course, you probably, like they say, it's preferably that you take it out and have it repaired, send it into some BMW place to have it repaired, because these things like are a computer that it's married to the car. Everything has to match the computer in the car. So no matter if it's the windows or the taillights or whatever, the computer runs everything in the car, and if it's not married to that same IP address basically in the whole car, then it won't work. It won't even start. So that's a bad thing, you know, because you just can't just slap in a new one. However, there is people out there that have found ways around that, and that is actually where you take and you put the, you know, you make the car basically think it's a different car when you put it in, and you program it basically, and you can get around that and make it work. So there's two things you can do, I guess, you know, but I guess the second route is a little bit harder to do, or there might be someone who has actually done it that may, you know, figured it out. That was a lot easier to do. So this one here, yeah, the computer module, I plan on buying the software, firmware, and everything, and the maintenance stuff for that. And if it does go out, I will try to repair it myself. Now, since I'm an engineer, that's the kind of stuff I do. I can actually do that, and since I also have my, yeah, I can do that. I got quite a bit of tools and oscilloscopes and scopes of every kind, and meters, and you name it. So pretty much I can fix just about anything. So that would probably be one thing I could learn how to do if I want to keep this car. If not, I'll just ditch this car and forget the whole idea, and just, you know, bypass the whole thing of trying to mess with this whole computer thing, and just go get a older one that doesn't have it, you know, because I mean, yeah, I have my patience, you know, and then I have my limits. And this car, if the sensors keep popping up bad and everything, and the more I start digging through it, and the more I start, you know, looking at this whole situation of, you know, how much am I going to keep having to deal with in this car, and if I get stuck in a snowstorm and the gear, you know, transmission just stays in third or fourth gear, and I need to get going, you can't go anywhere in third or fourth gear starting out, you know. If that happens and I'm freezing my nuts off, then there's, you know, this car is going bye-bye. I mean, I'm just going to sell it, and somebody in another state, in a warmer state, might want it, you know, and because it is in good shape and it has a lot of good maintenance done to it. But for now, I'm going to try to enjoy this car. I'm dealing with the little stupid things like this stupid little sensor things coming up all the time, and every time I wash the car, the sensor goes back to normal. You know, the lights go off for the, you know, tell me the brakes and ABS are not, you know, they turned off basically for the ABS brakes. And you know, stability control. Now that's another thing. That's what it's telling me. Stability control is no longer on, so it's not going to keep stability control, and that's fine. You know, I can handle that. It don't bother me none. I don't need ABS either. I prefer cars without ABS, because ABS is more a pain in the butt than anything else, because you're stomping on the gas and it's not slowing you down fast enough, and sometimes you just want to hit that brake fast enough just to avoid something, you know, like a deer or something in the road, instead of just slows you down. Well, what good is that, you know? So I don't mind squealing my tires when I hit the brakes. You know, my old truck does that. You know, if I'm going to stop, I want to stop. It might skid a little bit, but the sucker's going to stop eventually. But I've had pretty good luck just hitting the brake, and you hit that thing hard as you can, and you got to do it, and you know that you can, you got something there instead of just slowing down, kind of stuff. Which is also a pain in the butt on ice and snow, because you're trying to stop and the thing's going and then you keep crawling and crawling and crawling. Pretty soon you're in the bigger snowbank because the stupid thing wouldn't stop because you got studded tires, which will stop, but it pulled that garbage on you. So ABS off during the winter time, definitely. So that's one thing that sucks. I mean, is ABS in the winter is just garbage. Yeah, so this is just a kind of temporary thing, project thing. Who knows? Maybe I'll keep the car and just say screw it. I'll rip every sensor out of this thing, and if I gotta do the sensors on the engine for the engine or oxygen or whatever, I can do a jumper wire with a resistor and a diode and bypass the sensor. That kind of stuff. I know about that stuff, so I can actually get around some of that stuff. But yeah. It's kind of up in the air. I like the car. I like the style. I like the interior comfort. But, you people pick your car that you like. And, sometimes you might want to just try to make it work out. And sometimes you might just say, screw it. This is more of a headache and I don't have the time to mess with it. I'm just selling it, that kind of thing. So, but the older, I would say the older the better. And I thought I went old enough that I wouldn't have to deal with a lot of this stuff, but usually they say anything over 1996, you're going to have this stuff with all the computer module stuff in it. So anything below that would be fine. But I thought about it, and I still might. In fact, the weird thing is anything below 1996 is $3,000, $4,000 too. So, and they have a ton of miles on those things. And I was kind of looking at that like, well, what am I looking at here if I get an older, really, really old? And, yeah, you got to find something that has a newer engine or had a rebuilt engine that's been done by BMW or somebody that knows what they're doing. Because, yeah, there's BMWs out there. I see them all the time on Craigslist, BMW, mechanic special for $100. That's, you're like, well, there you go. If you want to start from the ground up, the body looks great, the interior's halfway decent. Get a $100 BMW and start from the ground up. I even thought about putting a 350 Chevy in this thing, but if the engine blows up someday, and I thought, no. I guess the kind of thing about that, you start getting into that where you're doing the engine and drivetrain, you're gonna get into more headache than I can imagine. So I thought that would not be a good idea after all. Although it'd be fun, but that's a major project, and you got to put all new stuff, supports and motor mounts. Everything has to be redone because nothing matches. So I don't know. That's more of a project. Plus, you don't even know if your shifter is going to match up. You might end up, moving it forward or backward, and you can't go forward very good because there's only 2 inches between that and the dash. So yeah, I'm rambling on, but I thought I'd go over some of these things with this BMW. This is a 2003 BMW and 325xi, and I thought that this would be probably something that was important to somebody else that wanted to get one or owns one. And by the way, to reset these sensors, like if your car's going crazy, like your wipers don't work for a little bit, or, something stays on, like the gear thing, if it just stays on there all the time and don't let you go into, anything else except third or fourth gear. The way to fix that is turn the car off, open up the back, and disconnect your negative on the battery. And leave it there leave it disconnected for like 2 hours. Just find something to do. Just sit there and smoke a cigarette or talk to a buddy on the phone for 2 hours or text someone for 2 hours or go on the internet on your phone. Just sit there until 2 hours is up. And people say an hour is fine, but I like to go 2 hours just to make sure. So yeah, I say 2 hours. You can go to an hour. and then hook it back up, and because you got your toolkit right in the back of your BMW, so it should be in there even if it's used. But if not, then you just got to carry a 10 millimeter wrench with you in the car in the back. Just carry a small one. You don't need anything big, and it just use that 10 millimeter on the negative end of the battery. And there's a little nut on top of the terminal on the battery. There's nothing. You don't turn the side one because the side one isn't anything to turn. It's actually the nut on top. You loosen that up and the whole thing comes loose. So you loosen that nut on top of the terminal, and then the whole thing comes loose, and you can pop it off. And it's just, don't take that nut all the way off. You only need to go halfway up, and it's all loose enough to take it off. Then put it back on when you 2 hours is up, and it sets the GM module ECU, and you're good to go. And I just did that because I had changed out a fuse. I blew a fuse in the I blew the cigarette lighter fuse, and it shorted out because the stupid USB thing was shorted out, and they do short out. And yes, you're gonna find out those little plug-in things do even smoke and catch on fire. And so yeah, those things are garbage. You know, they're cheap. They're like $2, $3, $4 at the gas station and that, and you've used it to charge your phone. Well, you plug that in, and if you got a short inside there or something goes wrong, because they do heat up inside there, and eventually they do short out sometimes. And it shorted out, and it caused a fault in the ECU, the GM. Just caused you know, something weird thing, and so I had wipers weren't working, and you know, a couple other things. The sensors on the dash are all coming on, or the alert, you know, alarm sensors and everything were going on. In fact, my car alarm went off. So I just went ahead and disconnected it for 2 hours, and then plugged it back in. It reset everything in the car, and it was good to go. So that did it. Fixed everything. So basically, when you have a problem in the BMW, you, first of all, I mean, you don't want to use the reset on, if you do the key reset, which is you turn the key over, you know, so the dash lights come on, and then you just push the button on the left side of the steering wheel with the blinker. Push the button on the blinker for like 30 seconds, and then it's supposed to reset. Well, that only resets your service time to change your oil. You know, if you don't want your service light on, then just do that. Turn the key on and push that thing in for 30 seconds, and then as soon as it says reset, you push it again, and it's reset, and then you just, you know, wait a couple seconds, turn your key off, and then start your car again, and then it resets the service thing. Which, I don't know, I kind of like the service thing in one way, because it does kind of, you know, tell me that, oh, what the heck was that? Oh, that was 21 miles per gallon. That's because I'm driving the mountains all day. So, yeah, I was out scouting around, looking for deer. So, anyways, yeah, this is pretty much the problem is just dealing with that. You know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that sensor thing, your service engine soon thing, unless you actually get it serviced or you change the oil yourself. And be sure you use the oil that it says in the book. Now, this one says it likes to use Castrol, so I have to get Castrol, you know, synthetic blend to, or Castrol synthetic in this car only. So, otherwise, you know, I don't know. I guess, and I don't know. I've never heard of anybody having engine problems when they use something else. But using what they prefer, even if it's more expensive, is good to do. And yes, they say you're supposed to use BMW oil and BMW this and BMW that. Well, they don't sell BMW anything here where I'm at. They don't have even a dealership. So, you know, there's no BMW anything here, so you have to go with the second best thing. So, and it works just fine. Yeah, there's no problem with that. Alrighty then. I think I'm finished. I think I went over the BMW thing here pretty well, and if you guys got any questions, say it down in the comments below. Or, if you liked it, subscribe.